بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد سيد المرسلين في كل وقت وحين. يا ربنا لك الحمد وإلى شرف النبي الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. Alhamdulillah, Dhu'l Hijjah Mubarak. We're in the month of Dhu'l Hijjah. Alhamdulillah, it's a sacred month, which means it's a month that has always been traditionally in the family of the Prophet ﷺ, and all of those who are part of that tradition of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, has been a month of peace, a month in which one is supposed to realign oneself with the concept of peace. And that's been the case for millennia. That this month, Dhu'l Hijjah, meant that it was time to put away all grievances, time to put away all grudges, time to put away all feeling of hostility towards others, and a time especially to not harm anyone. And we continue that tradition. The Prophet ﷺ continued that tradition and that meaning because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reaffirmed that these are sacred months. There are 4 sacred months, and that Dhu'l Hijjah is one of them that God regards as sacred. And so that we know that the origin of this tradition that was there even amongst the Arabs who were there before the Prophet ﷺ offered the message to them, that it's an authentic tradition that's divinely inspired. And here we are today in that month, and we're called at a very basic level, before we even think about Hajj and before we think about fasting on the day of Arafah, we're called upon at the most basic level to put away our grudges and to invite an inner peace into ourselves, and to make a conscious decision to not argue and to not hold on to bad feelings towards other people, and to not provoke anyone, and to not be provoked. Because of course that's usually how arguments begin, when one person is provoked. Either we provoke someone or we get provoked by someone. So to resist that provocation. So Bismillah, if we haven't started, then let us start today. Today it's Thursday, and the first day of Dhu'l Hijjah was Sunday. So these are the 10 days at the beginning of Dhu'l Hijjah that are considered very, very important. So a layer that comes over top of that initial layer of the peacefulness and the sacredness of the entire month is a special layer that comes just for the first 10 days. So it's like you're eating a cake and you've got the bottom layer, and then now you've got a second layer that's just for the first 10 days, a very special layer. So what's your experience of the first 10 days? What do you know about the first 10 days? What have you heard about these first 10 days of Dhu'l Hijjah? Maybe you've heard something in a khutbah, or you know something from some other study that you've done, or some other inquiry that you've made as to what is the significance of this time. Maybe you can share that with us.
Something I've always heard is that it's a time for...
Hold the mic.
Something that I've always heard is that it's a time for forgiveness and asking and seeking forgiveness.
Yeah.
Maghfirah.
And you can see how that very much matches with the entire theme of the month, because to reach a state of inner peace, it's all about forgiveness of the other. to begin with. It's about forgiving whoever you have a grudge against, because if I say that we're supposed to put away grudges, you can't just do that in a sweep it under the rug kind of way. That doesn't work for human beings. It might work in a house to sweep something under the rug. It might work with objects. You can hide things with other things. But a human being, Allah has created us so that the impact of trying to hide a negative feeling will actually be worse than dealing with the feeling often. You can't just sweep it under. You can't just pretend that you don't feel anger towards someone, or you don't feel a grudge towards someone. You actually have to grapple with it and deal with it. And that relates perfectly to the gift of the first 10 days that allows us actually to enter into the state of sacredness. And as Asma said, she's always heard that it's a time to ask for forgiveness of Allah. And those two concepts, as we've said before, they go together. The Prophet ﷺ said, forgive people if you would like to be forgiven by God. What a beautiful and simple prescription. If you would like to be forgiven by God, then forgive other people. Find it in yourself to forgive other people and connect it to your desire that God should forgive you. Once you connect anything to a desire you have for something that you want from God, the other parts become easier. If you can tell yourself, I'm going to forgive so-and-so because I would like God to forgive me, right away it becomes easier. Because right away you're connecting yourself to the divine and to the eternal axis, not just the horizontal axis that exists, but to this vertical axis that ties your soul to something much greater, your Creator. Right? And with that power of that connection, you can do anything. And you feel that there's an expansion of your own ability, where you felt like, I can't, I don't feel like it, I don't want to forgive, or I don't want to give sometimes. Suddenly when you connect yourself to, but I want God to give to me, but I want God to forgive me, there's something that just is released and opens up inside you, and now you find yourself able to do it because you know you're doing it as part of your relationship with God. And that God is seeing what you're doing, and He recognizes the effort that you're making, and He recognizes that it wasn't an easy thing for you to do. So, Dhu'l Hijjah, so mashallah, these are the first 10 days, and the Prophet ﷺ said that if you fast just one of these days, it'll be as if you fasted the entire year. Any one of these days. He didn't make it hard. He didn't even say fast all the 9 days. I'm saying 9 because the 10th day is Eid. You can't fast that day. But it's still part of the first 10 days in its significance. So, just one day, and it's as if you fasted the entire year. And the Prophet ﷺ said, if you stand to pray, also, just one night, it's as if you prayed Laylatul Qadr. So, the Prophet ﷺ said, these are the days in which whatever action you do, it's the most beloved to God. God loves the actions you do within these days. So choose good actions to do because they'll be amplified by God's love. They'll be amplified by a special attention that God is giving to those who are doing good things in these days. So choose something that you want to stand out for you. And of course we have many kinds of ibadah that you can do, as we said, fasting, praying at night. But there's also a very important kind of ibadah, which is something that my teachers taught me in Syria, which is Jabr al-Khatir, which is to be nice to people and to make people feel good. I guess that's the closest translation we can have. Do you have another translation of Jabr al-Khatir, Jabr al-Khawatir? To make everybody who feels that they might have a right on you feel that you fulfilled their right. So it's things like calling your grandma, calling your mom, calling an old friend, visiting your neighbor, visiting someone who keeps telling you, I haven't seen you in so long, when are you coming? It's all of those things. It's patching up all those places that have frayed in your relationships. And really making good on that, going and really making somebody else's heart happy. And that's a very important thing to do in the first 10 days of Dhu'l Hijjah. So look for these opportunities to do these things so that you can be connected to Allah in this special way. Alhamdulillah. What are the lessons that you, or the reflections that you might have when you think about the people who are at Hajj at this time? Especially if you have been for Hajj and you have a memory of that, you're thinking about, yeah, this is what I was doing at that time when I was there. This is what they must be doing right now. Looking forward to the highlight or the apex or the Hajj itself, which is Yawm al-Arafah, the last day before Eid, and trying to do the other things that you need to do, going around the Kaaba and going between Safa and Marwa and drinking Zamzam. What are your thoughts about that? What are your reflections? Hopefully we do think about those brothers and sisters of ours, because they're called the delegation. They're called the delegation of the entire ummah to the King, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how they're known. That those people are the delegates who've gone on our behalf. We couldn't go this year, but they've gone as our representatives. They're in a big delegation and they're visiting God. They're visiting His house. God doesn't have a physical place, but this is a place that God has asked us to gather in order to meet Him in a certain way, in a spiritual way. And they have gone on our behalf. We can't feel maybe the intensity of their feelings, but they're feeling it for us. We may not be able to cry every single night, but they're there and they're crying. Maybe every single moment, some of them. And that's all on our behalf. So we should think about them because they are praying for us. I think each and every single pilgrim prays for everybody else at least once on their Hajj. So that you're included in that. So mashallah, you're receiving blessings, you're receiving gifts whenever a person prays for another person. In the absence of that second person, the prayer is answered. So prayers are being answered for us right now. Alhamdulillah. What a deep connection we have then with each other. Something that this Hajj reminds us of. Sister, you want to say something? Asma, can you use the mic? Please use the mic because
It is almost like I probably should not say almost. It is a way of actually remembering the Day of Judgment. Like there, it feels almost like that, and it's living that on earth, feeling that. So.
And you've been before?
I've been in Umrah once, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, alhamdulillah, MashaAllah. So yeah, it's a feeling, as you said, like as if it's Yawm al-Qiyamah, the day of resurrection or the day of judgment, and so many people, because it's rare that we would ever be in such a vast crowd in this life. That vast, like it's really, mashallah, like a lot of people. So there's this really a great sense of being just a small person in a sea of people, and at the same time, feeling as if you're the only person in front of God, which is just like the Day of Judgment. You forget that you're amongst so many people, even though you're physically amongst a lot of people. So, subhanallah, that's a very profound reflection. Thank you. Anyone else?
Bismillah. Whenever I think of Hajj, it always reminds me of these documentaries that I've watched, and how it's the perfect example of when you make an intention or when you have a desire that is so strong that there's no obstacle that can come in between you and that thing. So like in the documentaries, you'll see, like I remember one of the ones we watched here a couple of years back, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but there's this like frail, I think he's like 90-year-old man who walked from India to Hajj or something like that with his little like thing like on his shoulders and just walked, and this is like a skeleton of a man, and it's just like you see something like that and you're like, subhanallah, like walked from India. You know, it's crazy, and you hear these stories of the distances that people come from even today, and back in the day, of course, when it was a caravan that you set out on a journey of several months to go. For us, we get lazy. If one of us has to cross the city, we're like, that's 20 minutes. No way, that's too far away. And to imagine like several months of traveling to somewhere. And also, I also did Umrah. And I remember when we went, it was like low season kind of thing. It wasn't crowded, but I found it so crowded. And it was just like, there's so many people. And it was difficult because, you know, in the Rawda, you know, or other places, people get very like aggressive to get to where they want to go. And so it's really a test of your patience to stay in that state of focus and the state that you want to be in. So if it was like that from my experience of an empty Umrah, I can't imagine with 2 million people to do the Hajj, what that must feel like, and knowing that people are still in such a high state that they're not thinking about the old lady that's elbowing them, they're just like in another hal. SubhanAllah.
Uba.
So, inshallah, I'll go. I haven't gone at all. But a friend of ours is, TD is there with her mom. And she was there a while before Hajj. And so she would go to the Kaaba to pray, just for regular prayers. And she would take her little niece with her. And so she's been sending these amazingly beautiful pictures of her little niece, just kind of, and she's only, like, she's not even 2 yet, lying on the floor, and the Kaaba's right there. And just this beauty. And then now she's sending us pictures of just it being full of people and the different delegations. And so whenever I see this, I think of just the unity of the Muslims. And so she had, you know, there was a Chinese delegation there. And so you're seeing all the similarities, but yet the slight differences. You know, the Kufis just a little bit different, and just that beauty that everybody is here for that one unified goal. Despite this diversity, despite all of this. And it just sometimes gives you the big picture. We get so caught up in the weeds of the divisions that we have, the problems Muslims are facing. And then you see this beautiful picture of, you know, you're given this nice, beautiful view of, you know, that's just weeds. There's a bigger thing. So that was what was really beautiful.
MashaAllah. Any other reflections about this gathering, and maybe the first time you ever heard about it? What did you think, or what did you?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Just a reflection in terms of, and I'm speaking from a North American perspective, that we lead such comfortable lives. We lead such comfortable lives. I'm talking about North American perspective. We lead such comfortable lives that we want Hajj to be comfortable. And yet when we go there, my thing was looking around and seeing the struggles people had to get there. That this is the ummah that doesn't have the same standard of living, does not have the same expectation of you in terms of hygienic conditions. But as Uba said, it's the purpose that they for, and you see it in their faces. They don't care that they don't have food for the day. Somebody's going to give it. They don't. They're not concerned about the physical discomforts that sometimes distracts you. And so it's a struggle for those who are used to comfort to deal with the physical discomforts when you're there. And I think it's a major challenge in terms of rising above all those things. So, and I've seen it all the times that I've been. Alhamdulillah, I've been many times. So,
MashaAllah. So rising above challenges for a greater goal, for sure. Anything else that you think about or that you've been taught about the symbolism?
So during Fajr, we've had the Quran classes with Sidi Anas, and he themed them to Dhu'l Hijjah and Hajj. And so we've been talking a lot about Hajj. In today's class, we were talking about, or he was talking about how people used to leave a year before. So after Eid, by a few days or sometimes a couple of months, they would pack their bags and get ready and go to Hajj. And this was happening up until like 40, 50 years ago. Like he was talking about his grandparents who would like, pack their bags and like leave all the way from Morocco and start the journey a year in advance. And like our scholars and our ancestors would do this, and it was known as like the Mosem of like they would go and meet at Alexandria and exchange, like they would teach each other and learn from each other and get to know one another. And subhanAllah, like he was sharing different stories about different saints and scholars and people of God who subhanAllah would pass away in the middle of the desert, and how their graves have now become like they attract people from all over the world. And it's the same thing like Hajj. Hajj was a desert with nothing there. And I can't remember the ayah, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Prophet Ibrahim, call the people and we'll bring them, and it's a desert. So it's like Bismillah. I mean, so it's I've noticed like a theme that Hajj is I've noticed like a theme where it's all about this bringing life to a land where there's been no life, subhanAllah. And so in some sense, I haven't really reflected on that, but it's just a theme that I've noticed, and I think it's incredible how it's in Hajj, it's in the place of Hajj, where Hajj takes place every year now for centuries, and then how there's all these kind of like side stories of the scholars and the noble people and honorable people who came, or who were on their way to Hajj, and yeah, anyways, it's fun.
MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah, yes. So Hajj and this time of Dhu'l Hijjah, they allow us to reflect on the journey of the prophets, not just one prophet, but the journey of many holy people who are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and connected to this story, the story of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, we have Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salam, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi salam from the same land. And so these stories are all connected, and Hajj is that opportunity to walk in the footsteps of prophets. So we know that you're there, and there's Maqam Ibrahim, there's the standing place of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. Every person, every pilgrim goes by that spot, tries to stand in that area, which is actually in the sahan, in the courtyard, I guess, of the Kaaba, as part of the masjid. And subhanAllah, that the meaning, the symbolic meaning of all of these things is what I would like to talk about. Because everything that happens in Hajj is symbolic. It's not actually, yes, you're fulfilling it using your body, but it's just like the prayer, the salah. We use our bodies, but we're meant to be allowing our spirits to make a journey through that. It's never supposed to remain at the level of the body, and that's similar to what Sister Khadija was saying, that the challenge is sometimes that we get so into our body, and we get so into the challenges of fulfilling certain actions using our bodies that we forget the symbolic meaning. And when I say symbolic, it's not intellectually symbolic, it's spiritually symbolic. It's the spiritual meaning of these things that we do. So to stand in the place of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, Maqam Ibrahim, it's not just to be like, oh, I stood there and here's a selfie. Or I stood there and I got the points. Like in a game, like if you go near a certain mushroom, you get certain points. That's not what it is. It's a very symbolic standing in the place of this man, this prophet, this beloved person to God, And you're asking Allah that you would be able to stand somehow in a similar stance as he stood in his life. The positions that he was able to take in his life. Very powerful positions throughout. The story of how he was able to leave his family in the middle of the desert. The acceptance of his wife to be left in the desert. These are the profound stories that should be rising to the surface for us at this time. They should be what we're thinking about. The way that Sayyidina Hajar alayhi salam accepted when Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam took her to the desert with their little baby and left her there. And she said to him, "Is this by the order of God?" And he said, because she knew that he was a prophet. And he said, "Yes, it's by the order of God." And then she said, "Then I have no worry, God will look after us. Don't worry about us." And there she stayed with her baby in the desert. In the desert, there was nothing there. There was no Kaaba there. There was no tree there. There was no well. There was no nothing. Just desert. And here she is with a little baby. And her husband is disappearing into the distance as he walks back to civilization. What a confusing situation for someone who is not connected to God. What an absolutely bewildering situation if you're not connected to God. And yet when we look back at it, it makes so much sense to us. We know that there's going to be Zamzam coming, there's going to be a Kaaba coming there, Sayyidina Ibrahim is going to build it with Sayyidina Ismail, everything's going to be great, there's going to be a story of how Allah sends a ram to replace Sayyidina Ismail. We know the whole thing because we're looking at it from our angle. Hindsight is 2020. But think about her, how she was in that moment and her immense strength. And then it's no wonder that every single Muslim who came after is asked to walk in her footsteps. So there's another pious figure from amongst the people of God in whose footsteps we get to walk. You and I symbolically, and the Hujjaj both symbolically and physically. The people who are actual pilgrims walk in her footsteps both symbolically and physically. Has anyone been for Hajj here? You've been, mashallah, mabruk. How did you find that part? Yeah.
When you walk, you're trying to remember. And when you're walking, you're trying to remember these stories. And before Hajj, we would have like lectures by the leaders, and so they would tell those stories. So you're trying to imagine those things. But as Sister Khadija said, we are so used to this comfort of this life. So many obstacles. Physical obstacles go in front of you, so it totally resonates what the sister is saying. So it's like constant struggle, trying to intellectually and spiritually think about those things and yet not be bothered by physical obstacles.
Alhamdulillah. So we're very lucky then, because we don't have to deal with any of the physical, and we should be really jumping into the spiritual. You and I sitting here, we don't actually have to do those things, but certainly we can be experiencing the meaning of those lessons, mashallah, in what we do in our contemplation. Contemplation should be part of your ibadah, part of the way that you worship God anyway. And so the content of your contemplation during this time should be those stories and those experiences. Because if you're going to contemplate the beauty of a tree or the beauty of the waning summer that we have, those are beautiful things to contemplate. But right now, the content should be what's happening and the story that is being relived through the experience of the pilgrims. And you can do it, mashallah, sitting comfortably in a masjid with no physical struggle, only the struggle of concentrating, only the struggle of allowing yourself the time to do that. Because in essence, all of us should be able to engage in this experience of the Hajj. We shouldn't be like, oh, well, I'm not there, it has nothing to do with me. No, the Prophet ﷺ already said that every action in these days, no matter where you are in the world, is beloved to God. Therefore, engage with the current that's going on right now. with all of these people gathering in this one place. Gather with them with your heart. There are so many people who get sometimes more out of the Hajj than the people who are there, simply by their connection, their contemplation, and their longing. They're longing to be there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees that. And to wish and long to be amongst good people, to say, I wish I could be there with those people standing at Arafah. I wish I too could lay it all at God's door and say, Ya Rabb, forgive me. Forgive me for a whole lifetime of everything that I've done wrong and everything that I haven't done right. All the good things that you invited me to that I had no interest in, I had no time for. I wish I could be amongst those people who are being washed with a tide of forgiveness and rahmah, love of God pouring down on them. Just to say that and just to feel that is an ibadah. It is an act of devotion to God. So I remember that especially the sa'i between Safa and Marwa, that you're supposed to run if you can. If you can't, you should walk. I could barely walk. It was so tough. I couldn't believe how far apart they were. I had been told the story since I was a child, and I just thought, okay, like it's two little mountains in a desert. What's it gonna be? And it was a whole other story when I got there. I couldn't believe it. And I think Sheikh Hamdi was practically dragging me at some point. Like I was just like, I don't know if I can do this, but I have to do it. It's part of the rites of Hajj. And wow, mashallah. And you see other people like jogging and just, mashallah, they're fine. And so, subhanallah, these are important. It's a very, very important experience to be confronted with your own weakness and confronted with your own illusions as well. And to see that there's a whole world of other people out there. And that's one of the most profound experiences of Hajj, is to go there and you think that you are a devoted person and that you're devoted to prayer and that you love God, and you see other people crying and you can't even produce one tear. You see people crying as if they've lost a family member, and it's just out of their gratitude to be there. And you realize, wow, as Uba was saying, yes, there are a lot of problems with the Ummah, but there are a lot of people who are at an elite level of spirituality that far outstrips where you are. So it's very good if you give yourself airs about how special you are because you're part of Sana Collective or because you attend a halaqah every week. You realize that there are people with far less resources. Right? They haven't gone and studied tajweed and aqeedah and this and that, but their ability to connect to God, it's out of this world. And they're getting it all in that place. And they're not being deprived of anything that sometimes we are deprived of. Right? So it's in that way too, it's also a very Yawm al-Qiyamah kind of experience, because you face your real self. You can't go and just take a break from the situation. You can't just go and have a nice long nap. You're in the haram the whole time. Even if you have a nap, obviously people sleep, but you can't use that to escape from God and from your own lack of having taken care of the relationship. Because of course, if I ignore somebody and then I have to go to their house, it'll be awkward. But if I've kept a good relationship with them the whole time and then I go to their house, it'll be very natural. I'll be very happy to finally be at their house, and it'll be like home to me. But if I ignored that person, ignored their calls, and then now something happened and I have to go to their house, maybe someone in their family died, so I have to now show up, but it'll be very awkward, and I maybe won't know how to behave with that person. Or I'll realize at that point I should have kept better touch, because I can see the person is much happier to be seeing other people and feels much more comforted by the presence of other people than me. Even though I showed up to have a presence here, my presence is not that important. It's not that special, because I didn't cultivate the relationship. So, alhamdulillah. So we walk in the footsteps of Sayyidah Hajar alayhi salam, who had a complete and total trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as I said, when we look back, we think we know her whole story. We know that her baby will be blessed with a miracle of Zamzam. And please don't think it's because he kicked so hard. That's not what happened. It's not. You cannot kick hard enough to produce a spring of water from a desert. It's a miracle of God. And it was a miracle that was meant to be. And it's a miracle that's directly related to the mother and her trust in God and her showing that she was going to take this action. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because she didn't take that action of running back and forth between the two hills or mountains out of desperation. She didn't do it because she was in a panicky state. Like, oh my God, I have to find someone. Where are y'all? Please, maybe someone will show up. No, she didn't do it in that way. We know that. We know that she had complete tawakkul ala Allah, complete trust and reliance on God. Because first of all, she wouldn't have just accepted to stay in the desert had she not had that. It didn't come as a surprise to her when they ran out of water. Why would that come as a surprise? It's not you or me. I mean, that might come as a surprise to me after a few days that, wow, my God, there's no water left. These are people who understood what it means to be in a desert alone. It's one of the scariest things ever. It's a death sentence, really. That's why we know there's a hadith, I talked about it last time, I believe. The hadith of the man who lost his camel in the desert, and then when he found it, he was so grateful to Allah that he was just overwhelmed by his appreciation that he said, oh Allah, you are my slave and I am your Lord. He was just completely like, whatever say, like just khalas, everything was upside down in his head because he was overwhelmed with gratitude. Because, why? Because, not because he loved his camel so much, but because it was a miracle to be saved. Your camel goes missing and you're alone in the middle of the desert, you're done. It's game over for you. And what would even bring your camel back? Like, the desert is so vast, other than God, right? So this is what it meant for her. She understood that without God, this is a death sentence. So it wasn't a surprise for her when she ran out of water. So she wasn't running between Safa and Marwa out of a sense of, oh my God, I'm out of water. I feel like I'm losing my mind. No. So this is often when we talk about this story, we think that it's a teaching about, oh, I have to be someone who trusts in Allah, but I take action. But I want to talk about what was the action that she was taking. Was it really an expression of a belief that she would find someone? Because that's not even what happened in the story. Nobody came. Zamzam came from Allah. But there was no caravan that came. There was no person that came because they saw her running, they saw her at the top of a hill and they came to her aid. The meaning of taking an action is to be positive. That's what it means. To positively deal with the situation that you're in. Not because you believe the action itself will produce a particular result, but because you want to engage and not sit back and give up. And that's what we need in our lives too. We really have a need for that when trouble comes to us, when difficulties come to us. You're taking action, you should never think it's because you will solve the problem with that action. You're merely saying, Ya Allah, I'm not going to turn away from the life of engaging because I'm disappointed in you. I'm not going to just say, okay, I'm going to have a long nap and forget about this problem because I can't deal with it. No, I'm going to continue to engage because it's the ultimate proof that you're not perturbed by what's happened. Don't we always notice that with people who have difficulty when they carry on? We're amazed that, oh, this person, they lost their job, but they're still happy, they're still cheerful, they're still coming and volunteering all the time, they're still serving the community as if nothing happened. Or sometimes when we know that someone has lost a person, a relative of theirs, and we notice that they keep on cooking, or they keep on serving people, or they keep on, coming and cleaning up the masjid, we're amazed by that. But all of those things are not to bring back the person that they lost. We know that. It's just a way of saying, Ya Allah, I'm not going to step away from good action because I'm mad about what has happened. I'm not going to step away from being engaged in all that is good in this life. What is good in this life other than doing good? That's what's good. Because I feel so affected by the situation that I'm in. So this is the miracle of this saintly woman who stayed engaged and left us a sunnah that we all follow today, that men and women alike have to follow. Men, no matter how great they think they are running in the footsteps of a woman, a mother, mashallah, a saint. And some of them have difficulty running that run and walking that walk, subhanallah, both symbolically and physically, of course. Symbolically, many of us have trouble walking that walk of total trust and positivity, positive action, regardless of the circumstance, and continuous hope in God. So we walk in the footsteps of Sayyidah Hajar alayhi salam. We walk in the footsteps of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam also in the Hajj. So not only the maqam of Sayyidina Ibrahim, but also the trust again that he had when he left his family there in the desert, as I said, and also the trust when he was asked to slaughter his son. Again, a very strange thing, just like being left in the desert. It's not something you and I would ever be asked to deal with. We're asked much lesser things to deal with, and we resist, and we're shocked that we were asked to deal with losing a job or deal with a little bit of sickness, even a sickness we know we can recover from. We don't appreciate that God gave us that, or a little bit of discomfort here or there. And yet these things that were being asked of these prophets and saints were of a great magnitude that demanded a very, very high level of trust in God. And so we celebrate that, and we walk in those footsteps as well, that notion that would you be willing to give up what you love most if God were to ask you? This is a matter of contemplation. It's just a matter of contemplation. But it's a very strong and beautiful opportunity to contemplate. I remember when my dad would talk to me about this story when I was a teenager, and it really allowed me to contemplate a lot, just to ask that question.
I'm sorry, Shehnaz. I can't handle the...
That's okay. That's okay.
I'll see you later.
It's not that bad over here.
I'm late. I'll come later.
Okay.
I'll go later.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, just to contemplate that question for yourself between you and Allah. Would I be willing to give up the things I love most in this life were God to ask me? Could I do it if God asked me? What would be my reaction? And that's the invitation that we're given by the story of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. Because we know from the story, alhamdulillah, that God is not somebody who wants us to sacrifice human beings, or sacrifice our children, or sacrifice really anything, or give up anything for good. We know that from the story because Sayyidina Ibrahim didn't have to actually kill his son. But what we celebrate is the willingness to let go. The willingness to let go. And I remember my brother told me one of I think it's actually Ali Shariati, who you talked about, God bless him, who he has a teaching, or sort of like a khutbah, where he says, what is your Ismail? What is the thing that you adore to death, and that you would find it hard to give up, but that essentially you're willing to let go of. And of course, Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salam was a wonderful human being and a prophet, but sometimes the thing that we are not willing to let go of is a very terrible thing. It's a very unworthy thing to be holding on to so tight. It's not a car, it's not what I'm talking about, it's not a favorite outfit. Sometimes it's a habit, sometimes it's a stubbornness, sometimes it's an unwillingness to forgive, sometimes it's a way of looking down on other people that we feel contented with. We feel it's part of my coolness to look down on certain people or to look down on certain situations. Oh, I don't go to those places. And that becomes the thing that we're holding on to and that we may need to sacrifice. Not like we, alhamdulillah, as I said, Sayyidina Ibrahim didn't have to in the end sacrifice Sayyidina Ismail, but we continue to sacrifice lambs and goats and all of those because there's still the concept of sacrifice that we're asked to contemplate. Still that idea of letting go and giving up and letting something go from being part of your life to out of your life. So we were saying that amongst the important things that we're called on to remember as people of faith, as people of God, inshallah, are the themes of walking in the footsteps of prophets and holy people and connecting to them. And we were talking about Sayyidah Hajar alayhi salam, that profound trust that she had in God, that beautiful relationship that she had. So when we go between Safa and Marwa, or when we think about her experience, we should really connect to her as a person and not reduce her entire essence or her entire being as a person to just this running, as if it's just something you have to do to fulfill your Hajj. And for us watching from a distance, or if we've never been there, just some strange thing that's put in there. It's very, very important for us to always think about what is the deep meaning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given us a religion that's just about empty actions and funky, strange, weird things you have to do that you don't even know why you're doing them. Once you start to enter that realm of just doing it for doing it, or just getting it done because someone told you had to do it, you enter into a very dangerous area. It's an area that's very far from the lives of prophets, as we see. Because were they to just understand things at the surface level, nothing made sense in their lives. These two stories that I told you of Sayyidah Hajar, her experience, and Sayyidina Ibrahim, they make no sense if you take it on a very rational, logical, surface level. The only way that they make sense, and you can see that they understood that, is through a relationship with God and understanding this is a much deeper experience than simply what it seems on the outside. And if I had just been, just as Alina said and as Sister Khadija said, if we just go to Hajj and we just think about, I'm exhausted from going between Safa and Marwa, I don't know why I'm doing this, then you'll get lost right there and then. So that shows us that throughout our lives we're called upon to go deep into the meaning of things. When we lose our job, to not say, I don't know why this happened, I can't understand, it makes no sense, I was their best worker, they owe me an explanation. To always be able to say, but who's behind all of this? Who's calling the shots? Is it really my employer? Is it me? Do I make my destiny? Do I bring good or difficulty to my destiny? Or is there somebody else who's writing the destiny that I will experience? Who's creating the context that I am being then asked to respond to? Yes, we do own our responses, absolutely. But you don't create all of your context. You didn't decide which parents you'd be born to, which country you would be born in, what color skin you would have, what language would be your mother tongue. You didn't decide any of that. That's a context that was written for you. And that's just like anything else that happens that's outside of your control. And those things happen. Not every case is a case where you can say it's my fault. And sometimes saying it's my fault is a manifestation of your own ego. You're unable to just say, this is qadar Allah. It's got nothing to do with my fault or my whatever. So sometimes we swing on this pendulum. Either it's everybody else's fault, and we feel like we're a victim, and it's unfair, and this is injustice, and I'm gonna write a letter, I'm gonna demand my rights, they owe me an explanation. Or we go to the other side, I don't know what I did wrong, maybe it's my fault, maybe I had it coming to me. Why can't we just be in the middle and say, it's neither this nor that. This is all a puppet show. And there's somebody else who's a master puppeteer making everybody move. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, you cannot even move your tongue except with His permission. Nothing, not a leaf falls without His permission. You can't move your finger without His permission. People can't write you, your employer can't write you a letter saying that you're no longer employed without His permission. Without Him being the one who's behind it. He is musabbab al-asbab. He's the caller of all the shots. He's the one cause behind all the apparent causes. So the cause behind you losing your job is not what you think it is. I'm giving that example because someone today shared that with me and spent a long time being perplexed and asking questions of khalq, of creation. And creation cannot give you the answers that you're looking for. Allah huwa razaq. He's the one who decides where your rizq is coming from. That's it. When He decides that it's not going to be from that source anymore, that's it. And in everything there is a blessing. So this is all part of that exercise as well of thinking about trust. And to know that when we talk about Sayyidah Hajar alayhi salam, it wasn't this kind of, okay, I'm going to just suffer through this and I'm just going to deal with this really terrible thing that I'm stuck in the desert and my husband, went in another direction for now, literally speaking, or any of that. Trust doesn't look like that. Trust is iman, as we've said before. Trust is the most beautiful thing that can exist between anybody and anybody else. Whether it's between a human being and another human being, or between a human being and God. It's the ultimate expression of vulnerability and hope and respect for the other. When I don't trust you, it means I can't respect you. It means there's something lacking in you that makes me feel I can't lean on you fully. I can't tell you certain things. That means the way I see you is that you're incomplete. There's something that you ought to have in order for me to be open with you and relaxed with you. It's not there. Imagine if we are looking at God that way. What is it that He could be missing for you to not be able to trust Him? He's got everything that you need to trust Him. He's got the power to address all your concerns. He's got complete knowledge of everything. He knows what's coming. He knows what's in your past. He sees all of you. This is something I used to really marvel at, especially when I was younger, and I felt that I have so many parts to myself. Barakallahu fikum. I used to feel, I've got and I was an activist before, so that's the secret behind why I'm so against activism. I'm still, in some ways. I had this, especially when I first went to when I was in my early 20s, let's say, or late teens. So I had this side where I would go to protests and I would organize protests, and then I had another side that was, I would enjoy being with people who are not into that stuff at all. Muslims in my city at that time were completely, I would have called them apathetic, but they were not interested in that stuff at all. But I also appreciated, the things that they were interested in that environment of the masjid. And, other parts of me that enjoyed art or culture or music. And I used to feel that I can only show certain sides of myself in certain company. Will there ever be someone with whom I can show everything that I am? And then I remember when I went to Syria and I first began to have this realization that there is such a thing as a relationship with God that's real, that's full of all kinds of colors and sort of contours, and it's alive, and It's got all, ups and downs in it. It's got everything that any real relationship has in it and more. Then I realized that this is the one with whom I can show all parts of myself. Allah. He sees all of these parts of who I am. He's always seen them. He's been seeing them since I was born. These different ways that I interact, this, subhanAllah, and He accepts all of that. It doesn't mean everything is perfect in me, but He hasn't thrown me away because He didn't like a certain expression of my personality that was, meaningful for me at the time. So that's trust. Is being able to show all of yourself to God and knowing that He has everything that you need in order for you to completely rest in His care. And that's why it's so significant to understand the action and the meaning of the action of Sayyidah Hajar. It wasn't that she thought she had to do her part. There's no part that you have in anything, really. There's a share. There's a share of goodness that you have. You understand? When we say, what's my part in this? It means, what's my duty? What's my obligation? What do I have to do to make it happen? If we're doing a group project, my part, I have to do my part, right? I have to, let's say, edit it for the team. It's not like that with God. We have to be very careful. You don't have a part with Him in making something happen. He is the sole actor. You can't contribute anything to what He's making happen. But you are claiming a share in the interaction with Him. That's what it is. And that's what we learn. For example, that's what Shaykh Hamdi was teaching us, is the meaning of farad. It doesn't mean duty, it means your share. The part that you want to claim in the abundance of blessing that God has laid out for the world in this short life that we have. This is an offering from God. You want to show up and claim your share. Alhamdulillah. So one of those things that we have in this special season of Dhu'l Hijjah is the day of Arafah. And the day of Arafah was called by the Prophet ﷺ the best day of the whole year. Subhanallah. And it's this day when all of it's the Hajj actually. The Hajj is in that day. And subhanallah, it's a day where if you miss showing up at Arafah, which is outside of Mecca, you have to travel there. If you don't show up there, if you don't make it for the time between Asr and Maghrib, then you haven't been able to do your Hajj. That is the Hajj. So Hajj it's not necessarily in all the other actions that I mentioned. Those are, yes, they're important. They're considered the rights of Hajj for sure. They're part of your right of the experience of walking in the footsteps of prophets and holy people. But that Hajj is that gathering at Arafah and asking God and just making dua. That's what you're supposed to do. When I got there, subhanAllah, alhamdulillah, when I was in Syria, I was taught for the first time that there is a meaning to the first 10 days of Dhu'l Hijjah. I didn't think anything of it before. Growing up, this Eid would just pop out of nowhere in my mind and in the stream of time. I mean, and especially now, okay, if you have social media, you'll see a lot of photos and things like that. They didn't used to have photos from there. And in fact, it was considered a bit taboo to take photos, really, of that experience and of the haram. I mean, this was a very experience that you had to have if you went there. And if you weren't there, then too bad. You're not going to be getting snapshots of it to be a kind of vicarious experience. You can't do that. So I didn't really have a consciousness of it at all until the day would come, and then and sometimes for many people in that time, maybe 20 years ago, they sometimes wouldn't even come for that Eid to the masjid. They wouldn't even pray that prayer because it just felt like it's got nothing to do with me. I'm not able to sacrifice a lamb, so I have no part in this particular Eid, subhanAllah. And so when I went to Syria, alhamdulillah, my teachers taught me that no, this is the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ, to do as many good actions as you can do in these days, and to hold these days as sacred, and to forgive people, and to really clean your heart and have a peaceful inner heart towards everybody, to hold, it's part of holding it sacred in front of God, because He sees what's in your heart. And if your heart is full of missiles and stockpiles of weapons that you're developing in order to hate on other people and accuse them of wronging you, God sees that. And so you need to clean out that whole thing and say, there's no fighting in the sacred months. As Allah tells us, there's no fighting in the sacred months. So I learned all of that. And I remember, we would try to increase in our ibadah, in our worship of God. We would be trying to fast and things like that. And then I remember when I went for Hajj, it was so strange for me on Yom al-Arafah. I kept thinking, am I not supposed to be fasting? I'm supposed to be doing more stuff. But subhanAllah, the doing of that day is dua. That's exactly what you're supposed to be doing, is just talking to God. That's it. And showing up and showing your complete destitution before God. Your state of complete neediness and humbleness in front of God. That is Hajj. That's Arafah and that's Hajj. It's just to be there and say, Ya Rabbi, forgive me. Pour your rahmah upon me. Pour your love upon me. Bless my family. Bless all my loved ones. Bless this ummah. That is it. That's what you're supposed to be doing. You're not supposed to be reading Quran. You're not supposed to fast on that day if you're at the Hajj. Just open your hands up and open your heart up and be there. And so, alhamdulillah, that is something that we can also learn from. That Sayyidina Muhammad taught us that dua mukh al-ibadah, dua is the very heart and soul of what it means to worship God. Talk to Him. Talk to Him and come in humility before Him. And that's Yawm al-Arafah. For us, we're encouraged to fast. Those who are not in the Hajj, we're encouraged to fast, alhamdulillah, and to also make a lot of dua and turn to Allah on that day. And Sayyidina Muhammad said, even if you're not at the Hajj and you turn to Allah on that day, seeking Him, it'll be as if you are there. What a generous teacher we have. He always, you find in his hadith, he's always doing that. Always. It's a theme that he is never saying no. He's never saying, sorry, it's not possible for you since you couldn't make it. Every single time that he spoke about any goodness and people around him would say, but what about me? I can't do it. He would say, but if you do this, it'll count for that. If you do this more easier thing, it'll be as if you did that. Always. He never says, sorry, it's only for those who can do this. For example, there's a beautiful hadith about if you have more than one daughter and you raise her well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you and will honor you. And then somebody comes and says to the Prophet, but I don't have 2 daughters, so I only have 1. And he says, it's fine, even 1 will give you the same blessing. And he, subhanAllah, it's as if through these interactions more and more doors opened. Subhanallah. And so it's always possible to gain the blessing of anything that is talked about. That's what you learn when you keep hearing these hadiths. You begin to understand that this applies for everything. That I'm never in a situation of being cut off in reality. Because again and again you see that the Prophet ﷺ is saying the same thing to those who ask, to those who say, but I want that too. So if you say, I want to be at Arafah, even though I'm not at Arafah, believe me, you'll get it as if you were there. And if you say to yourself, I want to be making that journey or that walk, between Safa and Marwa, that I might learn to walk in trust of God, just like Sayyidah Hajar, it'll be as if you did it. And it'll be as if you got all the barakah of everybody who's there. These things are not limited. God is not limited. It's our beliefs about Him that are limiting. And they stop us from asking Him in the way that He should be asked. He's someone, as Sayyidina Ali said, alayhi salam, he said to his son, when you talk to God, understand that you're dealing with someone who's not difficult to deal with. It's not difficult to ask somebody who's generous. That kind of, anyone, even a human being who's generous, it's a pleasure to ask them for something. And what about Allah Al-Kareem? What is there that He can't give you? What is there that will bother Him if He had to give it to you? Nothing. Nothing bothers Him. Nothing takes away from His vast treasure and treasuries of goodness. Nothing you could ask for. So He's not holding on to things and not wanting to give you. Alhamdulillah. The last thing I want to share is something that really helped me when I was at Hajj, and I think it can help us in many instances in our journey to Allah. There's a beautiful teaching of the Prophet ﷺ about the day of Arafah, about a man who Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ is talking about how vast the generosity and rahmah, that love of God, how vast it is and how unlimited it is and how abundant it is, especially on this holy day, for those who are there in this holy place, who showed up. And I remember when I was there, I felt like, oh, how can I even be up to being, fully there on this day? Yes, I'm there physically, but it's so immense. I'm not up to this. I'm not up to truly getting from it what I'm supposed to get from it. And how can I ever keep that intense level of dua that you should have, right? Being in such a holy place, but I don't think, it's like, being in the Olympics, but you haven't trained properly, and you're just like, I could have got a gold medal, but I don't think I have the stamina to even do one lap in this pool. So that's kind of how I felt going into it. And alhamdulillah, this hadith gave me so much comfort. And it's that on this day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives everybody who's there, to the degree that He even includes in His love and forgiveness a man who wasn't even meaning to be there. And the story is of a man who was, again, chasing after his camel. He had been in the vicinity of Arafah, the plains of Arafah, with his camel, and then his camel started to sort of get away from him. And he kept going after his camel and calling. They have, people have camels, they have a way of talking to their camels and singing to their camels. So he kept going after him and kind of singing to him to call him back, until the camel and him finally, he caught up to his camel, and it happened to be right there in Arafah. At the time, between Asr and Maghrib, he wasn't even meaning to be there. He didn't even plan to be in the Hajj, and he didn't even do any of the other rites of the Hajj, and he was included by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that grace and rahmah, being there by mistake. But also not by mistake, because who led him there? And who made him catch up to his camel right there and nowhere else? The grace of God, who designs and lays out the route that we're going to take in our journeys to Him. And so many times we are that person who came for another reason, but Allah included us in the caravan of goodness that's going towards Him. What a generous and kind Creator we have. What a caring, and the detail of His care for us is unmatched. And the fineness with which He's charted out the course that we're going to take, and the kindness of the way that He pulls us towards Him, little by little, and we're unconscious that we're being pulled. When I look back at my life, I really feel that way, as if there's like this thread between me and the Prophet ﷺ, and little by little, He was pulling me the whole time, and He continues to pull me, and I'm not even aware. And He pulls me to all the right places, and pulls me into the right states. And we talked about how the Prophet ﷺ is watching out for us. The Prophet ﷺ is making dua for us and asking Allah to forgive us. All of this to say that, alhamdulillah, we should seek these opportunities just to show up. Don't focus so much on what you can offer, but truly be somebody like a pilgrim who comes empty-handed, and who comes in the simplest of clothing and just shows up to the house of God, be it that house, the Kaaba, or this house, or any other place that you pray to God in. It could be even a room in your home, but show up, and you will be included. Make even half an intention. Include me in all the good stuff that's going on. Include me in the dua of the best person in the Hajj, whoever you're very pleased with. And alhamdulillah, know that there are people in Hajj. If I went for Hajj and Alina went for Hajj, that means that there are a lot of imperfect people who are there right now too. It's not only saints who go for Hajj. There are imperfect people, and thus they are truly our representatives. They come there with all their troubles. They come there with all their bad habits. They come there with all their diseases. They come there with all their, everything that you think is wrong with the ummah, it's there right now. And yet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing that and He's healing that. And as Shaykh Hamdi made the dua, make dua for those people so that they come back with gifts for the rest of us. Spiritual gifts, not new hijabs and not new gold from Mecca. I don't know if it's like that anymore, but when my grandparents would go, they'd bring back gold because that was like the best gold was in Mecca. Alhamdulillah. But Allah bless all our grandparents, Ya Rab. Alhamdulillah. So not that kind of a gift, but the gift of tawbah, the gift of coming back with a new state that inspires the rest of us. Sometimes even if you don't know those people, their coming back into the city where you live will have an effect on you. Everything is energy, everything is these waves. People come back with angels, those angels will affect you. So make dua for those people that their sins are washed away, that their struggles are healed by Allah, that their trauma is healed by Allah, that whatever they're coming with, they represent me and my troubles too. And when Allah accepts and welcomes a delegation, that means He's accepted the country and the people who came, that they came from. That's what a delegation is. A delegation doesn't just go as I'm here for myself. They're coming in the name of the countries that they've left behind. And therefore, whatever they get, it's for the people that they left behind. And that's you and me. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be with those people. And I invite you all to come on here on the day of Arafah, inshaAllah. We will have that beautiful gathering between Asr and Maghrib, a chance to make dua, a chance to do some dhikr, the traditional dhikr of the Prophet ﷺ in this month, in these days of takbirat, of Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. This is what is part of the sunnah. And together, inshallah, we can do that to encourage one another. Bring somebody with you. Again, remember that this is a time of caring for other people. As I said at the beginning, that very amazing teaching that this teacher gave me in Syria that I was surprised about. I thought it was just about me doing more acts of worship, but we were taught this, that there's a secret in being good to people in these days. Be kind, take care of others. So be kind and bring somebody, if you like, to this event, inshaAllah, in the hope that they may taste something new and taste something sweet in talking to Allah, inshaAllah. Allah yabarak fikum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of us, accept all our pilgrims, help them in their journey, help them to stay connected to you, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, Ya Allah, as you look upon all of these people who gathered for your sake, make each and every one of them have a true and sincere intention, Ya Allah. They came all the way for you, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, Ya Allah. And you are not one to disappoint anybody who comes for you or anybody who takes a step towards you, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. Ya Allah, all of this ummah is in need of this Hajj to be a special Hajj. Ya Allah, all of this ummah and all of this world needs good things to happen, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. We need that your rahmah be increased. We need that your kindness and that your lutf come down upon us in great amounts, Ya Allah. People are suffering around the world, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. There are forest fires all over Canada and in the States, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, Ya Allah. We see what happens when you dry up our water, Ya Allah. We see that nobody can give us water but you, as you've taught us in Surah Al-Mulk. Ya Allah, we feel those times coming, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. We ask that you would make this Hajj a profound and manifest and palpable blessing for the entire world, that they look upon it and they say, this must be what changed things. This gathering has a meaning. This gathering has a blessing for the entire universe. Ya Allah, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, Ya Allah, by the noble intentions of those who left behind this tradition for us, by the noble intentions of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, who built for us, built and called not knowing how far it would go, but trusting in you. Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, Ya Allah, let us also be builders. Let us be people who build a legacy for those who will come after us. Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, let us be like Sayyidah Hajar alayhi salam, completely lovingly trusting in you, in your greatness, in your power, your total capacity to do anything. Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. Open in us the spring of Zamzam that will forever flow with complete trust in you, that spring of trust and hope and delight in who you are, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, in your greatness, Ya Allah. Allow your greatness to be the sweetness that we taste, Ya Allah, as sweet as water to somebody who's thirsty, Ya Allah, for there's truly nothing more delightful than to witness your glory, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, and to witness your capacity to create miracles. Ya Allah, we ask you for miracles, Ya Allah. We ask you for miracles to heal everybody in our community and in the world who is suffering from addiction to pornography, who is suffering and causing suffering to others through child trafficking. Ya Allah, these blights that have come upon humanity and turned human beings who you honored into the ugliest and most evil of creatures. Ya Allah, remove these things. Remove these things and stop these plots, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. Stop the plans of those who are doing wrong to others. Stop the abuse of others, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. We ask that by your power, you would rain upon us your rahmah and your transformative power, your transformative energy that turns the evil into good and turns those who are lost into those who are found. Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, Ya Allah. Wa salatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad, Sayyidina Mursaleen, bi kulli waqtin wa heen, Ya Rabbana lakal hamd. Ya Allah, in all times and all places, to you belongs all praise, and we sing your praise everywhere and all the time. Wa ila sharaf al-Nabi, to the honor of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Fatiha.
Allahu ya Allahu, Allahu ya Rahimu, Allahu ya Allahu, Allahu ya Kareemu. Of you, my Lord, I'm asking the gaze of your affection to heal all wounds and hidden disease.